Hello and welcome to the AI First Show. This is the show we talk about all things AI, tech, getting things done with AI. We call it AI First because for any given task, we look to AI to see, can we accomplish it with AI at a reasonable quality bar? Of course, it doesn't mean we do AI for everything, but where we can, we'll give it a shot. My name is Stephen Barr. It's my colleague, Leonardo Gonzalez. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Excited to be wrapping up a major project I've been working on for a couple of weeks called the Open Symphony. I'll be getting some content on that out soon. And other than that, still dizzy from all the things that have been happening over the last week.
Yes, it has been a very busy week. We just published an episode yesterday. This will be out probably tomorrow. So, yeah, there's a lot to cover. I think we're covering probably the top 20% of stories. There's a lot going on right now. Let's jump right into it. We're going to talk a lot about, in our first segment, open weight models. So let's have a look at the open weight model news. First one is a story about GLM 5.
So an interesting trend.
Okay, can we start that again? Sorry, I had an interruption. Okay.
And it's 5.1.
Okay. Alice, I told you I'm recording for a little bit. Let's try that. So first story is GLM 5.1. Let me share this on the screen. Have a look. Here goes. Okay. Oh, not that layout. That layout. Okay. Post by Ziwan Lee. Don't panic. GLM 5.1 will be open source. So why did he have to say this? Looks like almost 1 million views. So people care.
So it's an interesting trend that is starting to surface. And that is that these labs that traditionally release on day one an open weight model are now releasing the models via their API platform, and they later release the weights. I think a while back that might have happened. There was like a 2-day delay or a 1-day delay, and there was so much hand wringing. And now we're looking at like a 2-week delay for Minimax 2.7, maybe a month-long delay for GLM 5.1. And I think there's two things to look at there. One is these labs probably aren't making any money from these models. They spend gazillions of dollars training them. They share the weights on Hugging Face, and everybody takes them, and all these inference providers serve them, and maybe 1% of people connect to the original provider. Probably in China, a larger amount, just because it's easier in China to connect to Chinese providers. It's easier in the US to connect to non-Chinese providers. And I'm not even talking about policy. I'm just talking about payment methods.
Just latency, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that releasing a model only on their API platform forces people that want to play with this to like, I guess I got to get myself an Alibaba Cloud API key if I want to, play with this. Although a lot of times it's served through OpenRouter, and that's how you can kind of play with it. But I think it's also something that allows them to, control the narrative and polish the rough edges. One thing about 5.1 is it's supposed to be really powerful and really amazing and a huge step up. But I think the benchmark they released was like some internal benchmark. And the experience that several people have been having, and myself included, when playing with it, is some tool call errors. And it's like, okay, there's this like a really powerful machine that sometimes like misfires. So I think that it's kind of like stealth models where you have to guess who's behind the mask, and they offer them for free and they log all the data so that they can polish these rough edges before making them public. So who knows what kinds of adjustments they're going to do at the last minute. But there's an interesting post by one of the Zipu AI staff that was saying, hurry up, and tagged one of their developers who, was like joked, hey, don't like put me on the spot in public. Geez, you could have DM'd me. So it's somebody's working hard to finish it and release it. But the reason why I think, to answer your question, it was important to announce this and to say don't panic is because people are concerned. People are waiting for the other shoe to drop. What's going to happen with these open labs? Are they going to keep releasing the weights? There's been a lot of concern around Qwen team. A lot of them, got reorged out. And we're seeing that something similar happened recently with Allen AI, who's the maker of the most fully open model, training data, scripts, environment, code.
That's just down the road from me, the Allen
Yeah.
AI Institute.
So they're probably can't think of the word, but epitome would be a good one of the paragon of a fully open model. And all their leadership got poached by Microsoft. There was a major talent leak as well. So there's a lot of concern for the stability and the sustainability of the open ecosystem, the open models ecosystem. And it's interesting to see these delays become a new tactic or strategy or release mechanism. And it's making people a little nervous.
As a, quote, recovering academic, you always see in academic papers like source code and data available upon request as a little footnote. And then there's been analyses of how true is that statement. And you'd get the source code 20% of the time eventually when the author responds to your email. And out of that 20%, did it actually work? Did it do what it said it was going to do? And okay, it was kind of a cheap way of hiding, because by the time the actual paper gets published and you get your accolades and your conference invite and your tenure track list, oh yeah, that's just kind of a subtitle for later. And that world is pieces of it move so slowly. And so I worry that eventually we'll be open source eventually, which is no good. But at the same time, they have to make money.
It's fine to have a 2-week or maybe a month-long delay to polish the rough edges, but it's another thing to make people question whether a lab is going to even continue to release open weights. Those are two very different things.
Well, and that being said, we're not entitled to these people's work, right? Yeah. If they want to close off, but it's nice, right? And it's nice that we have all this access to this stuff. And they could close up shop whenever they want, right? They're not state sponsored as far as we know.
I think there's some DeepSeek investment in GLM. I don't remember that. Also, Kimi has some investment from Alibaba. I don't know. I have to do a deep dive into the org charts.
Well, okay. From your suggestion, I was playing with Fireworks today. And it's not on Fireworks yet. GLM 5.1.
Well, no, because the weights haven't been released yet.
So even the other providers can't.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to go just to the source. What is it? GLM.co?
Z.ai.
Z.ai. Okay. So if you go to Z.ai and
then you can sign up for the coding plan. Coding plan, if you're not worried about sending your tokens to China, is one of the most cost efficient, if not the most cost efficient intelligence per dollar. The quality and the quantity of the tokens available for the price with the GLM coding plans there's nothing like it.
Here we go. GLM coding plan max 216 a quarter, and there we go. GLM 5.1 right there.
I don't think you're showing it.
Oh, sorry. Should have tabbed. It said GLM coding plan, code with AI, crush a week's worth in hours. Yes.
So these are quarterly prices. You can click on the yearly, and it's just mind-boggling to think of okay, what's the yearly cost for something that is 12 times? No, you have to do all.
Well, you could burn through this with Opus.
3 times 5 is 15 times 4 is 60. So 60 times the usage of a Claude plan. I don't know which Claude plan was listed there.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to have to get good at price optimization. And I think that routing, intelligent routing is going to be its own thing. And just like at Amazon S3, you have S3 intelligent tiering, which decides which storage class automatically. We're going to have intelligent model routing.
You just gave me an idea. Because I've been thinking about, this smart model routing thing, depending on task difficulty. But what I had just said too could be maybe automated. Determine, it's a little risky, but you could try to determine either manually or in an automated fashion whether something is sensitive enough that you need to serve it on US zero data retention policy inference provider, or whether this is just some dumb data processing essentially, and I don't care, and send it to China for cheaper processing.
There's a lot of money to be made here in this space of how to figure that out. So I hope maybe it's you. So let's we gotta keep going. All right.
Yeah.
M2.7 Minimax. Another promise. Model weights coming in 2 weeks. Actively iterating. Just updated a new version yesterday. So this is 2 weeks, but this is March 22nd. It is now April 2nd.
A week and a half ago. So just a few days left.
Let's see. Has he posted anything since then? Head of engineering, Minimax AI. I'm not following. I'm going to follow.
Follow for sure. Yeah, we're waiting. We're waiting. People have been using it and seeing really good results. I think back when Minimax M2.5 came out, there was a little bit of not criticism of that model, but just this is around the birth of the SweBench verified scandal of realizing that there was data leakage. And so showing that, it was like having it match Sonnet or almost match Sonnet was maybe kind of a little of an exaggeration because of the limitations of that benchmark. But this model is noticeably better than M2.5. What's interesting about Minimax is I think it depends on the analysis. Some people say, hey, this is not as good as Kimi K2.5. It's not as good as GLM5. Others, like I think artificial analysis actually put it, up better than Kimi and almost as good as GLM5. But the interesting thing about Minimax is it's way smaller. So if you want to do local inference on prosumer hardware, this is not going to run on, most consumer laptop, GPUs. But if you have kind of a pro setup at home and you've got a few GPUs or you got some high-end GPUs, you'll be able to run something like this a lot easier than something like GLM5, which doubled in size from GLM 4.7. So again, a lot of these things operate on a Pareto frontier, and it's not looking at just like, is this model better than this one, in an absolute basis, but given other factors like, given the size or given the price, if you're doing inference based on an API, it's not quite as good, but it's good bang for the buck. It's good pound for pound, and that's important for different use cases.
Now, it's interesting that when you say prosumer hardware, so we're not talking Raspberry Pi AI Hat 2, that will fall over. But like if you have 4 5090s, which if you follow the /r/local llama subreddit is a somewhat popular stack, that will run Minimax 2.7 quantized fairly well. And if you have 8 of them, which is not, that would be expensive, and you definitely see it in your power bill, but it's not unheard of to have this at home. That would be the full model.
That would be like, hey, we've got Sonnet at home.
That would be
the Sonnet at home.
Incredible.
But it's good enough, for something that you could run on not an H100 or a multi H100 node.
I have this closet in my house, and I've got a radiant hot water heating setup. And all the hot water pipes go into this particular closet. And part of me is thinking, if I had a 5090 in there, I could turn off my actual hot water heater and just keep the pump on. And if it all rotated through this closet, like I could heat my house that way. Like I've almost got, but I don't have the GPUs yet. But eventually, when I do get that, that's exactly how I'll do that. The only problem is I would have to have some valve work to get rid of the heat in the summer. I don't want to distribute that heat to my house in the summer.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead. You're still going to need, maybe, H100s or several of them to run this, full model. But it's more approachable and more accessible. And that also translates in price when inference providers serve this, than the other models. So I think, it's especially geared toward OpenClaw. All the models are positioning themselves now as, hey, we do great on ClawBench, which I didn't even know existed, ClawBench. But when you have high token consumption and not necessarily the need for super complex reasoning, this is when the class of models is really compelling when you're looking at something in the 100 to 250 billion parameter, as opposed to a 500 or a trillion parameter model.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? You're checking email, getting things done from your to-do list, mashing data, but you're not, splitting the atom. All right. Speaking of, now shifting to a much bigger model, so going up the size hierarchy here, we've got Qwen 3.6 Plus, also supposedly open weight, but
No. So
no.
there's a very interesting development here. The Plus series of models is like the Max series of models that Qwen releases. It is only on API. So Qwen has been maybe the most prolific open model provider over the last year or two. They have some proprietary models that they only serve from the API. And their Plus models tend to be that. So what's interesting is usually they release the open model first, and then they release a Plus version. It's like, hey, you guys have been playing around with this. Try our, improved version. The theoretical context window is actually available, and it's got more bells and whistles. Here, they're teasing this essentially Qwen 3.6 before Qwen 3.6 gets released, and on top of it, it's their optimized internally, all bells and whistles thing. So
and we see claw branding right there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting when you look at some of these benchmarks.
All right, let's zoom in. So terminal bench beating.
We have to see what is Anthropic logo. Is there a legend? That is Quad 4.5 Opus. So this is Opus we're looking at here.
Okay,
terminal
remember
bench
4.5, not 4.6. 4.5 Opus. I saw they got a lot of slack for.
That's true. That's a sneaky little decimal change. But those two models are not drastically different. And it just goes to show you like the gap, or it's not even a gap, it's like a lead time. It's you could put it in points on a benchmark, or you could measure it in months. It used to be years. Now maybe it's going to be weeks. So it is very interesting to look at how this model stacks up.
Well, look at that. So image reasoning, they're claiming better than Gemini. That's impressive. That's
Which
one of Gemini's. This is Gemini 3 Pro.
Hey, that is not surprising, is the first thing I'm going to say. Qwen has been really strong on multimodal. Qwen 3.5 was trained from scratch for native multimodal, where they train text and media tokens together instead of having a vision transformer slapped on at the end. So I think this is going to be pretty fascinating. I've been into real-time audio video, back a year and a quarter ago when I was working on a live for E4, and that used Gemini to something Flash. Google just released, we forgot to put it on our list of things, but Gemini 3.1 Flash Live. And this is the live API where you can share your screen and you can talk, and it talks back to you. So it can be used for like virtual support agent or a virtual coach, or all kinds of use cases where you want to show your camera or your screen and have a voice conversation at the same time. So just a couple of days ago, Qwen 3.5 Omni launched, and it is the Qwen equivalent. It's not open weight yet. So here's yet another example of you have to go through their APIs, but maybe the price is going to be something else. So it's not surprising that they may have achieved superiority on some vision-related benchmark over Gemini 3 Pro, because that seems to have been Qwen's focus for quite a while, especially when they merged their VLM, their vision language variants, with their mainline model, which is something that GLM hasn't even done. They just released, I think yesterday, a couple of days ago, GLM 5V. They're still maintaining like these separate models, and that's like the main limitation of GLM 5 people talk about is like, oh, it's not multimodal, so I can't, give it a screenshot of my full stack app or something. Now you can if you use that model. Who knows if it's not a coding specialized model. And so this is the value of unifying models together, where you have one main branch that has multimodal capabilities, it has coding and tool calling capabilities, and you can combine all those capabilities together. So that's the one thing is, hey, Qwen kind of lost some momentum on the coding. That when Qwen 3 Coder came out, that was super exciting. And then, GLM and Kimi just kind of blew it out of the water. So nobody's been using Qwen for coding for a while. I haven't played with this yet for coding, but it seems like they say it's substantially better. And if it can code with multimedia stuff or do real-time stuff, like also very compelling.
We need to try out one of those vast.ai mini GPU. Well, again, we can't do it with that. We have to do their API.
Here's the interesting thing, and why I say this is an interesting new thing that I haven't seen before. And that was the other link that I sent there. They're doing an inference partnership with Fireworks. So they just shared this with me a couple hours ago. I was like, what? Like, that's amazing. So you've got an API-only model, but now you can access it through API with a US-based zero data retention policy provider.
So they must have some deal with Fireworks where they say, okay, we're going to send over our weights. Don't post them on Twitter, but you can. Let's have a look. Okay, so we'll have a look. Here we go.
Qwen. The wrong link here.
Okay, well here's the Qwen models that are currently there, but we'll expect this to
I meant to link to like an X post that here, I'll send it right now, or I'll open it and share my screen if I can find. Here we go.
Diego, maybe smooth this part out a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here?
So this is an announcement from Qwen announcing a strategic partnership launch where Qwen 3 Plus is going to debut on Fireworks. And I've never seen an independent or US-based inference provider serve a proprietary Chinese model through API. So the weights aren't open. They're not on Hugging Face. It's not like anybody can download this, but they've struck a deal with Fireworks so that Fireworks can deliver this. And that has the performance and the privacy and the compliance and the procurement advantages of working through Fireworks, but having access to something that is not on the open weight inference market.
With that being said, I'm just checking AWS Bedrock, and Bedrock also serves Qwen 3 Coder and Qwen 3 VL. So I guess that's what they're doing, right? Is they're making these cloud providers.
No, but those models are open weight.
Oh, okay. Let me share this tab to make sure I'm. Oh, I see. So this is Qwen sending their most proprietary secret sauce over to Fireworks.
Those are open weight models. You can get those from Hugging Face. Anybody can serve those. But Qwen 3 Plus is a proprietary model whose weights have not been released. There's not even a Qwen 3.6 non-plus version whose weights have been released. And you can only get Qwen 3.6 through API with Alibaba or with Fireworks.
That's cool. Yeah. That is these moats are getting far less moatier, right? Like, I was a use Bedrock for everything person, but luckily with really good harnesses like OpenCode, you could just switch over right away. And you sent me a little bit of JSON earlier, and I'm on Fireworks with GLM 5 fast, and it's pretty great. Yeah. I was actually just tabbed over to check on my gas towns. I've got gas town sending a bunch of stuff over to GLM 5 fast on Fireworks. So you're going to see my graph in our Fireworks console. I'm determined to make a dent in it.
Get our usage back up.
Yes, exactly.
It died down when I stopped running my Open Symphony stuff. I was like, oh, I haven't done coding in a few days.
Let's check out this one. Last the open models, Gemma 4, byte for byte, the most capable, according to Google's press release, open model. This just came out hours ago. Gemma 4. Okay, so they're saying our most intelligent open model to date, advanced reasoning, agentic workflows, probably has something to do with the claw, industry-leading capabilities, mobile first. So the deal with Gemma is that it's not that big, is it?
Well,
or how big is it?
There's 4 sizes, and it's confusing because there's some new vocabulary to explore. Most people know about MOE, mixture of experts, where you have a bunch of parameters and clustered in what they call experts, and then you only activate some of them for each token. They have something else now that they're calling effective
Here we go. These
And that's the,
models activate an effective 2 billion and 4 billion
yeah.
parameter
So,
footprint during
you know, you've
inference.
seen these like Qwen 30B. That means it has 30 billion parameters with active 3 billion parameters. So now you've got a new letter to play with here, which is E, which is effective. Um, and if you look at the other link I sent was their Hugging Face link. They talk about what they call per layer embeddings. So they have like
Gotcha. I'll pull it up in a second here. Per
ends.
layer embeddings.
So
Okay.
yeah, so they've got these total parameters, but they've got more parameters with the embeddings, and they've got different embeddings for each layer. Like I'm gonna ping Sebastian Roshka to make us one of those awesome architectural diagrams. Hopefully he'll do that for us soon, and we can learn what this is. Read a, I don't know if there's a technical report yet or just a blog. But so we've got these smaller models, which is funny because when I saw headlines or the summaries, I just saw that they had 31 billion dense and another that was like 20 something billion. And I'm like, those are not going to fit on your phone, But if you're looking at 2 to 8 billion, like, yeah, okay, now we're talking laptop phone territory.
Now, okay, so I think what this is saying, and might be a stretch of an analogy, like saying, okay, we've got our brains and there's all this stuff in there. And so say if I can isolate the piece of my brain that's really good at math, and even though my math neurons are connected to a few other things, right? Maybe a funny math joke in a book I read, or the girl in math class that I had a crush on, or whatever. But for the most part, you could say like take some isolate the part of my brain and pull that out. And so say if my brain had 8 billion embeddings, but if you want to talk just about math,
Yeah.
maybe
So
only
I
2
mean
billion of those are
that I think is
useful.
a good idea of what the mixture of experts thing is.
Got it. Okay. And so
The per layer embeddings thing, it has to do with the layers, and maybe the layers could be segmented, but I don't know, and I don't want to misspeak. So it's something that we need to learn about. And like I said, I don't even know if there's a technical report out yet. So it's something to keep an eye out for.
interesting. Effective per layer embeddings.
Mm-hmm.
Its own small embedding for every token. These embed. Well, I hope that we're down the road where we have these like proprietary measurements that are impossible to compare apples to apples anymore.
Yeah. I mean, a mixture of experts is a very, universally adopted thing. Mamba hybrids now are becoming universally adopted. We'll see. We'll see what this is and if it catches on. But if it helps with efficiency, that's promising because we want to move toward edge computing and edge inference.
Yeah, well, here is the Gemma. So this is a neat blog post. Have a look.
There's like enticing about this is it's supposedly supposed to be like really good, but we have to look at some benchmarks. The headline benchmark said, hey, this is as good as Qwen's 230 billion parameter model, but that's on that's on Arena, that's chat Arena. These of arena-based ELO scores. But I mean, you can't really trust much of anything, but that's like one of the least quantifiable things, like where, you can even talk about scale mattering, like, I don't know what the statistical significance of these differences in score are.
So I guess that's part of our AI first show branding is, our constant piece of advice, use it yourself. Get in there, get your hands dirty, use it yourself. And another advice, use a harness so that you can play with it yourself. If you're on a provider specific harness, you're only going to use their models and you won't know what you're missing out on. So use it yourself. Okay, next.
It's promising if it's true, like I say, huge if true.
All right, we have to come up with a couple of ratings. So this is like definitely one to watch. So yeah, why not just check it out? Just moving along here because we have to TurboQuant. This is a Google release, staying on the Google bandwagon a bit here. This came out about a week and a half ago. This is about compression, and so the idea is using an algorithmic approach to make the model effectively work within far less VRAM footprint. And so that's where we end up. It's funny, like if you go on Facebook Marketplace and look for old GPUs, the 3090s with 32 gigabytes of RAM are worth so much more than the 16 gigabytes of RAM ones because of this reason. We're trying to like get these models into VRAM. And with things like TurboQuant, it's using that VRAM more effectively. So let's dive into how TurboQuant works. Have you dug into the mechanics of TurboQuant?
So I'm taking a deep dive into the theory yet, but I've started to track how it's being adopted. There is a pull request into MLX by someone who's working hard to get this thing like match parity. And so it's apparently like not quite as performant as a full model in terms of speed or certain things, but it's getting really close. And then, with a big efficiency advantage. He said, it still needs a lot of work. So this could be maybe, I don't know, a few weeks out or so. But then once that gets merged into MLX, this means that you may be able to run better models on your MacBooks.
That would be pretty neat. I guess what it's trying to do is they're claiming apparently like 1/6 the memory footprint is like, on the elevator pitch, 1/6 of 1-bit correction. So yeah, that if this is if this and it's as good as they say, then that will be a pretty big jump in what you could do locally. Now, it's funny, there's a ridiculous Hacker News discussion going back and forth of, okay, is this why RAM prices are crashing? No, RAM prices aren't crashing. Like, go buy some. No, it's just we're going to use all available RAM that can be made for the next decade. I think it's probably already spoken for. But this will allow us to do more with all that RAM that we're buying. Would you agree?
We've been talking about this, the whole Jevons paradox thing, where for inference tokens as well, if tokens become more readily available in large quantities and speeds and lower prices, we're going to be able to leverage orchestration frameworks that do swarms of parallel streams of processing and are going to use hundreds of millions or billions of tokens. I've started doing that over the last week. So I think that the more of prime material is available, the more people will want to use it to make things out of it.
It's fun. I saw this kind of cool thing on the local llama subreddit. I'm trying to pull it up. Let's see where it was. This guy had, I guess, his good night routine that he called it, where basically as soon as he's done for the day on his computer, he will say, all right, he'll just disperse all of his computing capacity onto all of his current projects and say, make it better. Take a function, make it faster, take a code base, change it without changing the test suite passing, but just make improvements and letting it just sit there overnight and then checking the next day. Okay, what did it do? Which I think is an interesting idea, right? Because if you're actively developing stuff all day and then every evening on your local hardware, you just say, go ahead and churn and see what you can do. We're going to be able to do stuff like that, like have kind of performance improvements that will keep happening, whereas that wouldn't have been affordable 18 months ago.
Yeah, I think it's hard to speculate. And there's been so many misfires on this, but AR, I think, is going to benefit a lot from this. You have augmented reality, and how you augment reality can involve a lot of powerful multimedia inference, and being able to do that on edge devices is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's head to, I'm trying to find that article. Okay, let's go to the next article, which is ngrok. Speaking of quantization, I saw this blog post come up a couple of days ago. This is quantization from the ground up. This is talking about just explaining how quantization works, which admittedly I need to jump into this and spend a bit of time thinking about this. It's effectively like bucketing. right? So you lose some precision. Maybe there's some concepts that are very, very closely related that you kind of merge together in order to save space.
Well, I mean, this is just like the precision of your floating point operations. So it's kind of like having a pixelated image. You know, it's like how fine grained do you want calculations to be? How many decimal points do you want on that? And so what's interesting with some of the approaches like Unsloth's dynamic quants, which are, you know, some of the most quickly, immediately available and performant quantizations of these models, is that they do different quantizations for different layers. So they're like, hey, this layer, this thing, like, it's really critical to get this precise, whereas this other one, you could be a little bit, you know, grainier, fuzzier on this. You don't need full precision for that one. That tends to be a lot better than a flat quantization at the same bit for all layers. Now, an interesting thing here, I don't know enough about this to speak too much about it, but my intuition about it is that this could be extra challenging for these Mamba hybrid models like Qwen 3, Coder Next, that are based on a hybrid of your traditional transformer and your Mamba layers that basically scale linearly with your context length. I think that kind of hybrid architecture probably adds some additional challenges to quantization. So I would love to take a closer look at this and understand it, and because I think that that's definitely something that the industry is adopting. And so if we want to look at those two things together, and they will converge as to like, how do we deal with hybrid architectures and how do we deal with quantization?
I think an interesting thing that you could do, like, just to kind of get a feel for the quantization, is if you look at a model on OpenRouter and you could see like the prices, and then you say, oh, okay, they also are offered at different quantizations. So here, I'll share the screen real quick. So, like, here's GLM5, for example, and you could say filter by quantization. So they've got 8-bit, and you can see the input price being 72, and then 4-bit, so that's going to be input price being 80 or 95. So the less coarse it is, or the better, more precise it is, the more we're going to pay for it because it's going to use more space. And
so it's going to use more computations, really. It's the inference cost of the, there's the space on the VRAM, but then also the processing and the speed for that processing. All those things are related.
Yeah, power, all that stuff. Cool. All right, well, I'll post the link to this. This is, again, the ngrok quantization article. Is cool visualizations. A lot of neat stuff in here, and good that that's out there. Got a lot of traction. So, again, there's a lot to right now, but let's put that out there. Okay, this is a product that I want to share. I've been seeing this a lot on my Instagram, so I guess I am the target demographic for this because my the algorithm is recommending this parameter, tiny little machine that claims that can, run AI for you. Now, my first thought was, how in the world could you do this?
Is that TinyGrad?
Well, it's from the same company, I believe. Tiny.ai. They it's the same company. So this is like a serious. This isn't vaporware, right? So they are respected in the community. But like, my first thought was, how are they actually doing this? There's a good video by Alex Ziskind. I'll put this on screen just to see a good
If you want to carry a local and private 120 billion parameter large language model, you might need something like this. Big, expensive GPUs and computers. But what if I told you that 120 billion parameters can fit in your pocket? The first time I heard of something like that, Steve Jobs was putting 1,000 songs in my pocket. Well, this is a slightly nerdier version than that. And no, I was not happy about Steve Jobs putting stuff in my pocket. Stay out of my pocket, Steve. For the past few years, AI hardware has been moving in one direction. Bigger GPUs, bigger servers, bigger clusters. And if you watch this channel, you know I've built a few of those. Now, something very different is starting to show up. This is Tiny AI Pocket Lab.
Okay, so that's the device. No, I think this comment is kind of helpful here.
It's got two I's. I was wondering why this wouldn't load for me. It's TIINY.ai.
Got it. Okay. TIINY. There's the double speaking gift in there.
Damn.
TIINY. So tiny little device. They're saying AI Pocket Lab. Now, Alex Ziskind, he's very well respected, so he's not going to. I don't think he's going to like make stupid claims about
This
this.
is on Kickstarter.
But that being said, I think what they're doing here is they're taking of the model. So here's this comment is saying, you're taking an MOE model and you're effectively taking like part of, not all of the model is active at any given time. Is I think what they are doing. That is my guess. Do you have the Kickstarter campaign up?
Just on their page, they say live on Kickstarter, which to me, that's like a huge red flag. Yeah, this is very confusing branding because like I thought it was TinyGrad, which is a neural network framework from Tiny Corp, which has a product called TinyBox.
Yes, but the tiny box is actually fairly large. It's not tiny like in a pocket, right? The tiny box is like good size.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very curious to see if this is going to be vaporware or what. Again, I think they're not hosting the whole model actively at one time. Like, there's a lot of dead storage here, but then you kind of swapping out bits and pieces. But
the thermal transfer, like I don't know.
Yeah,
people thought that about laptops when they first came out.
So we'll see. But I've been seeing this. Actually, let's have a look and see what LearnLens says. So hardware innovation, paradigm shift from traditional GPU-based inference. What are they saying? They have 80 gigabytes of unified memory, terabyte SSDs. That's where they're kind of swapping out the model. 30 watts or 60 watt max power draw. 18 tokens a second on GPU.
I mean, that's not that different from a Mac Mini.
No.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of cool, and I don't know how much they want for it. What are they saying?
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep an eye on this. I don't think I'm going to fund their Kickstarter. What are they saying? $2.99 Kickstarter early bird. The power infer architecture proves that smart memory management can outperform brute force hardware scaling for inference workloads. Well, I guess that's a bit of space to watch.
Yeah.
Is the Tiny AI Pocket Lab.
And there's all these other, Ryzen, like the AMD GPUs as well. NVIDIA definitely has some competition. I don't know if they're using NVIDIA chip. They said unified memory, so it looks like they're not. And then there's Apple Silicon. So it's interesting to see the ecosystem, still try and have some with the hardware and challenge NVIDIA's dominance.
Interesting. They're saying that 20 tokens per second drops to 4 to 6 tokens per second at longer context, with first token latency reaching 28 minutes at 64K context.
Wow. So that's a good.
That would be not usable.
Yeah.
But it's a system on a chip, ARM 9.2, plus this NPU.
Neural processing unit.
This is going to be the part of the ecosystem that's like crypto, right? Where there's going to be a lot of stuff like this, where sorting out what's good from what is vaporware is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch to let's see, which one are we on? Here we go. Okay, the cognitive dark forest. This was like an opinion piece. This is based on the idea of dark forest comes from, of course, the 3-body problem series. That is a really, I don't know how to pronounce the name. The Chinese author, one of my favorite science fiction series of all time. I think his name is Cixin Liu. I'll look it up. 3-body problem, and it's also become a Netflix.
I think there's a new season coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Cixin Liu. Yeah, it's really neat science fiction. Kind of like changes the way you think. But what the idea is that not to spoiler alert. So if you haven't read the book, just go to it's a great book. Okay, 3, 2, 1. The idea is that if there are other alien civilizations out there, the reason that we don't see them is because the equilibrium in the universe is that it's dangerous to reveal yourself. Because if even one other civilization perceives that you're a threat, they'll just blow you up. And so as Earthlings, we send out all these signals out into space, and maybe we'll regret that one day because someone will say, wow, these people might be getting smart. Should we blow them up? And so the idea that they're making here is that it used to be we used to have an incentive to kind of share all of our ideas because actually executing was the hard part and it's the moat. But now executing is easier. So therefore, nobody say your idea because if
Mm.
here's your idea, you can execute immediately.
Like
So
a cloud source code leak.
there you go. And now there's 100 clean room implementations of Claude Code and more as we speak. So I don't know. What is your reaction to this? What do you think? Do you still think that that ideas themselves are worth sharing? Right, with Dropbox as my go-to example, right?
Yeah.
You could say, all right, well, anyone can build this, but they had it. They had Dropbox. They kind of hit the sweet
Yeah.
spot first.
I don't know. I mean, I still think there are some kind of intangibles there in what could fall under execution that matter a lot. And software development is one part of execution, but there's so much more, from product market fit to go-to-market strategies to, like just connecting with the entrepreneurship, the startup community, and the Tech Week events last week helped me see that the space is definitely changing and we're facing new challenges and new opportunities. It used to be that it was, like you said, really hard to build stuff and ideas were cheap. It was like anybody can have an idea, but can you really build it? And now that's kind of turned on its head, where it's like, hey, anybody can build it, but do you have an idea that's valuable? And so you definitely see a shifting of the scales, but I wouldn't be extremist and say, oh, it's easy to execute. Anybody can vibe code a SaaS over the weekend and scale it. No, there is something to technical maturity, to scalability, and the non-technical components of entrepreneurship that are important and depend on the team and depend on the market and depend on all kinds of ecosystem conditions. So I would put a big caveat to this, but I would say that it's pointing in the right direction of a tide shift happening.
Well, I think that as part of that, our expectations of what software should be is also changing, right? It used to be you kind of see your buffet of choices, and that's what you had to choose from. And now we're going to expect much more bespoke things. I want my software. I don't want to have an onboarding process with my SaaS and spend 6 months writing glue. I want it to be totally customized and bespoke to what I am, and that cost of customization is going down. So I would agree with this assessment if like you would hold the whole world fixed. But our preferences are changing and our expectations are changing. So I think if you have a great idea, your value add is going to be partially from the actual software execution, but also is it from marketing, from sales, from developing a reputation, from meeting your consumers'
And what does your
needs.
distribution look like? What kind of connections do you have? That can make or break things. I'm seeing a lot of, again, startup ecosystem in the Bay Area. You see a lot of things get funding that have no business getting funded. And you see a lot of other things that are breakthroughs in research that have yet to be adopted in industry, or these open organizations that are just starting to try and get some commercial traction. So I would say that the criteria for success, and a lot of that sometimes depends on funding, is not always based on even just merit. And maybe this is orthogonal to that whole point, but it's just talking about the complexity and all the factors. It's not a one-dimensional thing.
I think that there's I don't know, maybe a tech nerd fantasy that you just kind of build the best tech and then the market will just find you.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who's actually tried to sell something or even help start a YouTube channel, right? You can have great content, which I think we do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people will just find you. You still have to promote it and share it and make shorts and clips and all that stuff. That's part of the process that is important, right? And if we had crummy microphones and I don't know, if we had no production at all, that would, even if we said smart things, it wouldn't. That's not all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And code is not all it takes to run a business.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, from the tech perspective, we like to think that that's all that you need. But as you mature, that there's a lot of other stuff around that, like culture and sales and all that great stuff. Well, food for thought. Okay, next one I think is interesting. We're talking about benchmarks. This is the Millennium Prize problem bench, and I talked about earlier. I like math. I studied math in college. Millennium Prize are some math problems by, let's say, 7 math problems that are still as yet unsolved. The Riemann hypothesis, talking about the distribution of prime numbers, Navier-Stokes equation, P versus NP, about computational complexity. And so far, we do not have proofs of any of these problems that our models have provided us. So it'll be interesting to see. I just wanted to put this out there to track this. Because I think that math proofs require kind of a very different kind of knowledge, right? There's a lot of depth that's involved, but there's also analogy. And they're saying, okay, if I can connect to this branch of math, then I can use all the stuff that's proved over here to stuff over here. Like if you can connect a graph theory problem to a complexity problem, then you can use a graph result to map back. So it's a different way of thinking that I'm curious to see how this will evolve. I just want to throw this out there, something to track over time, because this is a benchmark that everybody's failing everything right now. I don't know. Have you seen this one yet?
No, this is a very interesting space, and that is looking at the limits of intelligence, however you define it. A big way that people define it is the ability to solve these problems that have never been solved before. And when you look at some of these benchmarks, some of them have a couple of flavors, with and without tool use, which I think is interesting. So like some of them is like, you want to see how well the model can figure this out on its own, but large language models are geared for a certain kind of thinking. They're not very good calculators. They used to not be able to tell you how many R's were in the letter strawberry. They have limitations that can be easily overcome with use of the right tools. So now we're starting to, okay, let's look at both things. And how well can the model figure this out on its own, or how well can it figure it out using tools? Now, these kinds of problems that have never been solved by anybody maybe require an innovative use of tools in addition to their internal reasoning. And it's interesting to see how progress can be measured and advanced, in these areas of almost intractable problems, and how can we explore intelligence. There was something I saw recently, which is not a millennial problem, but it was like one of those long-standing open problems that was called I don't know how to pronounce it, Bloom's Erdos conjectures.
Okay, I think it's Erdos. I think
Erdos. And then one of them was like strong enough to lead to a paper. This is Google DeepMind, and they're doing a semi-autonomous evaluation of hundreds of open problems. And then AlphaEvolve also is looking at long-standing mathematical bounds. There's a lot of interest in this area and seeing like how can we push LLMs to the brink, not in ranking in an ELO score in a chat arena or code changes, but really complex thinking. I think that's great. There is an interesting separation between that and real-world applicability, but having appreciated and been involved in science for a large part of my life too, I can appreciate basic research and understanding that we need to understand complex reasoning and problem-solving abilities, even if they're so different than what people are using tokens for today on their open clause, because it could lead to breakthroughs that have been maybe lackluster so far in things like medicine.
I think we hear the same argument about space, right? Like the average person isn't going to go to the moon. We all benefit from the innovations that are caused on the way there, right? I could see Neil deGrasse Tyson did a great segment about all the things that the Apollo program got us in terms of Teflon and grooved runways for the space shuttle and all this cool stuff. So yeah,
I could absolutely see that developing advanced capabilities in millennial problem, computational mathematics, could lead to better defense against viruses, which are an existential threat, I think, to mankind. So, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, MPP bench, we're going to keep track on that. Hopefully, in a couple of years, we see a bunch of green check boxes on that. All right, here's a bit more lighter-hearted one. We'll see if this is true or not. Let's put this on screen. Okay, this is a possibly real messaging thread.
It doesn't look like it, but it was actually part of a court proceeding.
Okay, so this is from like a Discovery. Musk result in 2026. Looks like Doge is making great progress. Got our teams on alert. Take down content doxing or threatening the people on your team. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. Elon Musk reacted heart. Are you open to the idea? Are you open to the idea of bidding on the OpenAI IP with me and some others? Want to discuss live. Interesting. Okay, so this is from Musk v. Altman Discovery. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I saw the link somewhere. There was a link that I clicked on. I don't know if it's commented in that thread and open it, but yeah, it's on a court open record thing. It's real.
Interesting. So what is the fallout of this? I have not tracked the story.
I mean, I don't know where this lawsuit is at, and it seemed like there's just a lot of posturing there and technical maneuvering, and having to do with the origins of OpenAI as a nonprofit and how things unfolded. There's the link. That's the source up there. That one. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
And
tab. Here it is.
But I don't understand. And this is the scary thing to me, is what is the connection between this lawsuit and the whole concept of bidding on the OpenAI IP, as if they're going to dissolve OpenAI or do a hostile takeover? Like, what does that even mean? Bid on the IP?
Or would he meant to say IPO? If they're assuming that would happen? No,
I don't think. No, I think it's bidding on the OpenAI IP. I mean, so that's a huge grenade. What does that even mean? Like, that's a huge thing to like try and contemplate.
Yeah.
So I mean, one entertaining thing is seeing how buddy these two people are, and heart emojiing each other and DMing each other. But you don't imagine that the heads of these different giants in AI or technology are collaborating that closely. So this is a telling thing. But the other thing is like, what it's behind the strategy or the planning that is causing something like this to even come out, bidding on the OpenAI IP.
Well, we will have to see how this evolves over time.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to hurry through the next couple of ones. It is, let's see. Oh, okay. This one might be a bigger one. Let's share this tab. OpenAI acquires TBPN. This just happened today. Everyone didn't want to do their press releases yesterday just to think they weren't April Fool's joke.
Yes.
Today,
a lot of people thought this was a joke. They're like, no, it says April 2nd.
Yeah, they're TBPN. This is the Boring Phone Company.
No. That is not what TBPN stands for.
Oh, Technology Business
Programming Network.
Okay, let me try that again. Diego, can you write that? Diego, have a look at this. The TBPN, this is the Technology Business Programming Network. Okay, so, interesting.
I think we showed some of their stuff on a previous episodes. They have really funny, like, breaking AI news, like just breaking this hour. This employee goes to that company as if they were being traded like baseball cards,
Sure, I'll have to watch them. Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty entertaining. So apparently they're pretty big on X. They're huge. And the thing that people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around is, what does this mean for journalism? If OpenAI owns this, how can we trust them to be independent? How can we trust them to be unbiased? And it's definitely making people take pause.
I mean, at least they can be transparent and say, okay, well, we're biased.
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting too is seeing OpenAI's positioning around this. I haven't read it all or even TLDR'd it to an LLM, but I scanned through it and I saw something about how they want to focus on a conversation and informing people and involving people. And we so much activity from AI labs on X, but other than that and technical blog posts, there's kind of a vacuum for how to engage with external communities and inform them. Shows like ours, I think, are an important aspect of that. But I think this is interesting to see how OpenAI wants to get involved in engaging with news and commentary and community discussions.
Yeah, this is it'll be interesting to track this over time and see where this goes. Okay, that was a packed episode. There's a lot more to cover. We want to do another episode very soon on all the different Claude Code leaks, the clean room implementations, what all of that implies. So please follow us for that, subscribe, and share any of our content. We really appreciate that. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Leonardo, for being here, and we will see you again probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.